Oh, wait.
What's going on, everyone? We're here. We're here. Three of us. There's four, and he can go ahead and bring his camera back on because it's just saying his name there. It's not. It's not disappearing. So
Oh,
there's there. This is the Aggie Zoom Hangout version 5.0. We have Robert Cessna, legendary Robert Cessna. I'm not going to bother trying to point anymore because, as I found, everyone appears everywhere and all kinds of different. So Robert Cessna is in here somewhere. Brian Davis is our special guest today from the Austin American-Statesman, covering all things UT out there. And, you know, that's not a subject that Texas A&M fans like to talk about or anything. So we figured we'd have him on, chat a little bit about what's going on. And then there's the great Alex Miller twisting and tweaking and checking the feeds. And we'll go ahead and throw out there, if you have any questions, comments, if you're watching on Facebook Live right now, want to get involved with the action, with the conversation, go ahead and throw a comment in there. Alex will jump in and read them, and we can get Brian, Cease, or I, or Alex to answer all of them. So with all everything set up, Cease, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests further today?
Yes, I've known Brian Davis for a long time, more than he cares to admit. We got to cover Dennis Franchione together. I mean, it was just like, well, I guess we didn't cover Dennis. We really covered Mike McKenzie, and to cover Dennis Franchione. And we had a lot of great post press conferences. And I always loved when Brian also showed up for Gary Blair, because Gary Blair and Brian Davis in the same room. 3 hours later, I could ask a question, but other than
magic.
But anyway, good times were had by all during that. Hard to believe those trying times at times with Dennis Franchione. So Brian Davis, great journalist, good sense of humor, good guy. And that's why we have him on the show. And he put up with me for many years as we sat together. And sometimes we did delve off to what we were doing, but we always had fun. That's the bottom line. So glad you could join us, Brian. First thing, I was driving over here. I guess you, Olin Buchanan, and a few others have the, had a chance to cover A&M full time, and had a chance to cover Texas full time. Is it one and the same? Is things different covering Texas than it was covering A&M?
Well, first off, thank you for that incredible introduction. Serious question. Incredible intro. I really appreciate that. Yes, we may or may not have delved off topic many a time. But that said, you're right. There's not many sports writers in our state who have covered both, universities on a full-time basis. To me, they're dramatically different in very different ways. That's not to say that one is necessarily better than the other. They're just it's night and day differences, quite frankly. And the fan bases are different, obviously, too. And you have to take all that into account. The one thing that you always have to remember when you're covering Texas A&M is the specific language in and of itself, right? There's no such thing as alums, right? They're former students. You have to remember the war hymn and all those types of things, which I think was great. I mean, I absolutely loved it. Of course, I got on the beat, and within 3 weeks, the VIP newsletter scandal broke, and so it's like, wait a minute, my bosses are asking me at the Dallas Morning News, wait a minute, how come you didn't know about this? And I'm like, because it was a secret. Maybe the secret newsletter, perhaps. So that was my indoctrination into covering Fran and to covering A&M. Fran did not, as we know, that Fran did not make it through the balance of the year. That year, he's the one who got up and stormed off when our man, who was the AD, Cease? It's going to kill me that I can't remember his name. Remember the AD sat down at the table after the Texas game, the win over Texas. And announced,
Bill Byrne, come on.
Bill Byrne, that's right. Bill Byrne, that's right. His name escaped me all of a sudden. If he follows me on Twitter, though, he doesn't send me any nice notes like he does send Mike Finger. But that's a whole nother story. So great times. The Mark Turgeon era was fantastic. The DeAndre Jordan year, or the DeAndre Jordan 6 months of A&M basketball was so memorable. I mean, how can anyone forget that, right? Just lots of good stuff happening there, you know, in Aggie land during that time.
So how did you ever think you'd be doing this job where Texas wouldn't be playing A&M? I mean, when we were back there kidding around about how much A&M and Texas meant to each other, when you and I were on the beat at the same time, to think now it's been years since I talked to you to ask about sports, because Texas and A&M, other than in chat rooms, are not really doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's sad. I mean, I know that, you know, I know that there are a lot of diehard Aggies who say good riddance and believe in that, and that's fine. I have nothing against that, but I do think that this is a game that should be played. I think it's a game that, you know, it's about coworkers against coworkers. It's about family members against family members. I think it's a game that should be played now, tomorrow, until the end of time, regardless of what conference anybody's in or what kind of hard feelings there were. You know, and I think enough time has passed that some of those feelings are healed up a little bit. But, you know, but the schedules are full, which I mean, I don't buy that as an excuse. I tell you what, I know this, guys. I would be a lot harder on the Texas folks if the Big 12 only had 8 conference games. You know, A&M has only 8 conference games. Texas has 9 now. You know, so, but if they had only 8 conference games, man, I think we would be on our side of the fence. We would be all over Texas to make this happen. You know, now whether A&M ever wanted to or not, who knows? But like I said, I think it's a game that should be played.
Brian, what is the hot button subject everyone wants to talk about right now? What has the return to practice been like for the athletes coming with COVID-19? It seems like, really and truly, if you want to look at the transparency factor, Baylor and Texas have kind of been on the forefront of releasing numbers, talking about what that progression back to workout has been looking like. What has it been like from your perspective, and what is that how does that come to be?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. You know, Texas announced that they had 13 positive tests out of just football players. The men's and women's basketball teams and the volleyball teams just came back this week. And so they got tested on Monday and Tuesday and probably Wednesday as well. And so we don't really know what those test results are just yet. But, you know, 13 positive cases on football, I mean, to me, that sounds like a lot, but there are other schools that have a lot more than that. You know, I don't know. I'll be honest with you guys. A month ago, I thought we were going to have football and a full stadium, and it was going to be normal on September 5th. I really and truly did. Now I'm kind of the total opposite. I think football gets postponed. I really do. This second wave that's happened, you know, the hospitalization rate is up. I mean, yes, the death rate is still very low, but I just find it very hard to believe that college administrators are going to allow amateur athletes, you know, to be put in this situation where, you know, they could be perceived as putting them in harm's way, right? You know, I don't particularly want to get into all the political aspects of it because it's obviously become a political issue now. But, you know, you got to remember, college administrators always err on the side of caution. And if they have any belief that playing football is not safe, then I don't think they will. I don't think they'll do it.
What would that do? Austin's one of those schools in a big city. Most of us, college footballs, the Manhattans, even College Station, not a small town as it was even when you were here, but still we rely so much in this community on football. What about no college football in Austin for a year?
Well, it sounds bad, but now they've taken away ACL. They've taken away music concerts in general. The lakes here are still open, but, you know, Barton Springs is closed right now. I mean, a lot of stuff that there is to do is not happening. That's not good. And if you take away, one of the biggest outlets for entertainment that there is in this town, I mean, that's not good, Coach. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I know that it's the same at A&M as it is at Texas, as it is anywhere else. If we don't have football, I think college athletics, as we know it, will be permanently and maybe forever scarred, almost irreparably, because the TV money that is needed to keep these athletic departments afloat is shocking. I mean, even the SEC, even the mighty SEC, they need the TV money that comes from playing games. So I really do think we're going to have games. It's just, I think it could be in the spring, unfortunately.
A lot of times you look at these situations now with football season here, we look so much at the ADs, how much power do they have, what do they do? Del Conte, big hire in getting Schaefer. He also has done some other things. How do you rate the job Del Conte has done, and how is he handling the coronavirus situation?
Well, I mean, from a straight carnival barker standpoint, I mean, this guy is ace. I mean, you can't have a better salesman.
He learned it all from me.
I'm telling you. I mean, the only thing that I can think that would be better than Del Conte as AD would be Cease. And just out there telling his jokes and just going
Cease doesn't
crazy.
know how to use Twitter. Cease doesn't know how to use Twitter.
We can fix that. We can teach that. No doubt. But coming off of the Steve Patterson era, and then the Mike Perrin era, where everything was about being a cheerleader. Texas needed a real AD, and they got one in the guy from TCU. The guy, I hate using Kirk Bohls' favorite phrase, but the guy just gets it. He really does. He knows what fans want to hear. He knows how to soothe coaches. He knows how to work with donors, the media, all of it. And I think, to be quite frank, I think A&M saw this from a distance and thought, we need to get a guy somewhat like that, someone who can raise our profile a little bit, in Bjork. And I think Ross has done a phenomenal job of that. I mean, you guys may think the guy's a total scumbag. I don't know. But everything that I've seen from the outside, Bjork appears to be doing a terrific job of elevating his profile and that of A&M's as well.
Now, we've never made any reference into being the next Brian Davis of AD. So we think he's doing a good job. So, but then with the second part of that, Brian, is you always go, how do you get along with the football coach? With work, how can you get along with Jimbo? And they were an instant hit. It seemed together, looking on the outside, looking in, they seemed very comfortable. What about Del Conte and Herman?
Well, they're definitely a very good pair. What's funny about it is that everyone has told me is that as jovial and outgoing Chris is to the outside world, there is little doubt inside Moncrief who is the boss. And several people have made that very, very clear to me, is that Chris Del Conte loves telling jokes. He loves being kind of the center of attention, but he loves dropping the hammer too. And I think you have to have that. Which is very interesting. It's a very interesting mix that you got to do. Everybody thinks that the football coach is the real boss here, but I don't think DeLoss. I don't think people looked past DeLoss. They definitely. Everyone knew that DeLoss was in charge, right?
Without doubt.
And I think here everyone knows that Chris Del Conte is in charge. I mean, look, Chris Del Conte is the one who was furious when Tom Herman, flipped off the LHN cameras, right? Chris Del Conte was the guy who was out of his mind when Herman did all these crazy sideline dances against Missouri in the Texas Bowl and all these other things. But at the same time, Chris Del Conte is the guy who hit the green light for Tom to blow up his staff and hire 7 new assistants. This past offseason. I mean, the AD understands that you got to get football moving to make this whole thing work. The feeling here is that Tom Herman can get it done, but he's also 15-10, I think it is now. after two so-so seasons and one trip to the Big 12 championship game. So, I think people will have a better feeling about Tom after this year. Well, whenever it happens, if it happens, because look, if you can't win with a senior quarterback who is going to be number 2 in the record book when it's all said and done, and a group of talented wideouts after 3 good recruiting classes, it's probably not going to happen for you.
So does Brian Davis think that Tom Herman's going to win a Big 12 championship and get the Horns back to the promised land?
I don't know. Is Lincoln Riley going to get hit by a bus anytime soon? Yes.
If I'm driving, yes, maybe.
Right. This gets back to the kind of the people ask me, what are you going to put for your predictions in terms of the preseason pecking order? And look, to me, it's Oklahoma pinned at the top until someone knocks them off, right? And it should be that way every year. Baylor came very, very close. Baylor had a terrific year, but now that coach is gone. Now Rule is gone. So to me, Texas is the clear number 2 going into this year. I think Oklahoma, Texas should at least get to the Big 12 championship game. I think Texas will have much better quarterback play this year, but OU's cranked out 2 Heisman Trophy winners, so it's hard to bet against that.
See, I want to change the subject here, but I before I do, I want to let you throw. Were you going to throw out a Vic Schaefer question? Because we.
No, I wasn't.
Oh well, there you.
Well, I actually was going to. I guess I was going to say, how can you fire a women's basketball coach and go all out and hire a great women's basketball coach? I think, and your men's basketball coach has kind of been like underachieving. How do you keep him? That's on the outside looking in. I'm thinking like, how does that happen?
Well, I could put it to you in the way that the bean counters and Chris Del Conte looked at it. Okay, you had 2 coaches, Shaka Smart and Karen Aston. Karen Aston, her contract was up, right? And as we all know, with the way these contracts work, you can't give one of your top coaches a 1-year extension or a 1-year deal. You cannot do that with a major sport like women's basketball. So if you're going to do that, you have to give this person a multi-year deal. Okay. Now compare that with Shaka, who, you're right, has not been all that great. He's been 500 for the majority of his time here, a 500 coach. He has 3 years left remaining on his deal, worth about $10 million. So, heading into a pandemic, do you really just want to stamp a $10 million check to get rid of a coach that, quite frankly, everyone here likes as a person? He's very well liked as a person. He just doesn't win enough, right? And then you compare that with a women's coach who has done pretty well, got her team to the Sweet 16, but the women's program was totally non-competitive against Baylor. Karen is, I think her record was 1-21 against Kim Mulkey, right? And all 3 of you know, I've never known the University of Texas to be okay with being second in anything, quite frankly. And so to get steamrolled year after year and not even have a chance to win the women's Big 12 title, and that's a problem. That's a big problem. And here you have a guy in the Vic who, you guys know, Cease, you definitely know. This guy will crawl on broken glass to come back to this state, come back home. And he really wanted to come back to Aggie land, but I think Gary is going to die on that sideline, before that happens. And so, what do you do if you can't get the job you've always wanted? You take the next best thing, which is the Texas job, and that's why Vic Schaefer's now in Austin.
But you have a good point, because you're in Austin, because I think you're about 11-10 against Mulkey, because I've seen some great confrontations between you and Mulkey. You've been able to hold your own, and that's tough to do.
Brian, you think those questions were appropriate? Yeah, Coach, I do. Yeah, I do. I don't think so. Okay, all right.
Michael Peters might get the award for the best information dropped on one of these when he revealed recruiting violations that happened just off the cuff. Brian Davis is going to get the award for best impersonation.
There you go.
So, Brian, we've the main source of entertainment through this pandemic for everyone has been nostalgia, looking back on things. And so I've tried to take a chance to ask all the reporters on here to look back on your career a little bit and kind of pick out some of the best parts. And so what I've asked a lot of the other people were, do you have any great stories of favorite stories of your career, or favorite people you interviewed, or funny stories? And I'll segue that into, I know you mentioned before we started this, you have this great memorabilia wall back here, and you have something that I think you want to share with the class that might kind of fill this question as well. But I also, yeah, I mean, it's like an ESPN generated backdrop is what that really is. But yeah,
Adam Schefter's got nothing on me, right?
If you want to share the little memorabilia you showed us, and or any great stories that stick out in your career when you look back on it.
Well, I mean, you're right. There's so many interesting people and interesting things. You know, I was very fortunate when I began my career writing for the Dallas Morning News to cover Texas Tech. And, you know, what happened was Bob Knight had just gotten hired, and, you know, Texas Tech had never had a beat writer, a Dallas Morning News beat writer living in Lubbock. You know, Al Carter at that time was living in College Station. He was the Brian Bureau for the Morning News. And I think Chip Brown was the Texas writer at that time for the morning news in Austin, but Lubbock didn't have anybody. So we had this staff meeting one day, and they go around and they say, who here wants to move to Lubbock? You know, and I'm the only idiot who raised his hand, apparently, right? So they send me out to Lubbock to cover Bob Knight, and it was like, oh, by the way, you got to cover the football team too, which is fine. So to get to what you're talking about, and Steve, the details of this are foggy, but you were there as well. I said 01 earlier, but I think it was 02. I think it was 2002,
that's right?
Right?
But I wasn't there. You're right. It was
okay.
Before time, so I think it was 01 or 02. 02.
Right. 101. One of the most memorable A&M Texas Tech games of recent lore. Of course, well, I say recent lore. There is no more recent anymore. But at that time, it was one of the most memorable games going, and Texas Tech won. If memory serves right, that would have been the B.J. Simmons year, I believe, for Texas Tech. But what A&M fans will remember most is how some people came pouring out onto the field, right? They tried to tear down the goalposts, and next thing you know, these goalposts were getting shoved in the A&M section, which led to, as it turned out, people started pummeling each other and swinging binoculars. And it was Seth McKinney's dad, who was the starting center at the time. You know, he comes to the locker room all bloodied and stuff, and he tells RC famously, "The coach, they were coming over the wall." And, you know, you can only imagine RC's face at that time. But that led to this. I got a section of that goalpost, right? Look at this thing. This is amazing. So this thing was shoved into the A&M fan section at Jones SBC Stadium on that wild day in Lubbock. Me and Kevin Blackistone were there for the morning news, and they took the goalpost and they cut it into sections, and I got a piece. And if you remember, the Tech had this big investigation, you know, watching video clips and all this. And I'll never forget Gerald Myers telling me on the Monday afternoon after that game, he says, "Well, Brian, it turns out them old Aggies were beating up on each other." And I said, "What do you mean they were beating up on each other?" "Yeah, Brian, they was out there swinging. Our people had nothing to do with it." I said, "So you're trying to tell me that Aggies were punching Aggies?" "Yes, that's exactly right." And that's how I wrote it up, you know, in the morning news. And of course, that didn't go over very well with a certain subset of fans, you know, from Bryan College Station. But nonetheless, that was an awesome day. It's one day I'll never forget, you know. And there's a whole lot of other things, you know. I can sit here and tell you for 3 hours Bob Knight stories, but you know they all end in with profanity, which I'm sure Steve has never heard me say ever. You know.
No. That was 2001, by the way, because
okay.
What happened was they said put Cessna on the beat because they'll use him instead of the goalposts next time.
Hey, speaking of, I gotta tell this. So speaking of profanity, all right, Cease knows what I'm
Hold on,
saying.
I need to hit the mute button. Hold on.
No need to hit the mute button. Okay, so it turns out I'm dating someone who is eventually going to become my wife, Debbie, and we're at some point Cease knows we're going to have a kid, so I'm telling him, hey, we're going to get married, it's going to be great. And Robert Cessna pulls me aside and very, very seriously he says, BD, I love you, and you're the best, but you gotta watch the cussing, man. You got it. You don't want your kid dropping F-bombs on you as a 2-year-old, right? And I was just like, I really took that to heart, and it didn't work. I'm keeping it clean for the sake of this Facebook video, but I'll never forget that was Cease's big advice to me: was don't cuss so much.
Listen, I've covered Ron Washington. I've heard it all.
I remember that. Then then I saw him 1 or 2 years later. I go, have you cleaned up your mouth? No, not at all.
I'm like, are you out of your effing mind?
Those were good times. And you're right. That was my only serious time I probably had with you in all those years. That was hold you aside because but now every time some woman curses at me, I go, Brian Davis, your dad? No, just make sure.
Hey, I'll tell you another funny story of a game that I'm pretty sure you were at was the Nebraska game that year. Because what was memorable about that thing was several games, how Fran almost ran Stephen McGee into the ground, right? In a win against Big Red at Lincoln, no question about that. But it was the fact he put Gerard in for a meaningless 2-point conversion, and Gerard got hurt in that game. And I'll never forget that Fran, he faked with us that he didn't know that it was a rushing record that Stephen McGee had set that year, right? And the only reason I found out that he faked it is because radio had just told him that. Dave told him on the radio that, hey, did you know Stephen McGee set the new quarterback rushing record, and Fred's like, wow, I didn't know that. Holy smokes, I didn't know that. And then he comes to post game, and people like me are like, hey, did you know that Steve McGee set an A&M quarterback rushing record? Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, are you serious? I didn't know that, right? And then, of course, we just grilled the guy for getting Gerard hurt on a stupid 2-point conversion that meant nothing. Well, at least we thought it meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. And you remember that Monday, Fran came in and he threw his 2-point conversion chart at us. Here, that's what the card says. That's what the card says to do, so you do it.
I remember that.
Yeah, and so I took that card because he threw it at me. I was right there at the table. I literally took his 2-point conversion chart. I wrote the whole thing down and I put it in the paper, right? And because the next day, Alan Cannon calls me. Yeah, coach isn't really happy today. And I was like, why? I said he threw the card at us, and it's like, here, take this pic. And okay, well, I put the whole thing in the paper. Here's what Fran's 2-point conversion card said. So,
if I'm not sorry, the card said he shouldn't have gone for it, but McKenzie must have given him the wrong information on the head. It's like, and then Brian could say, you could tell that he was lying because his hair started getting whiter and his nose got a little bigger.
Why are you gonna throw McKenzie under the bus, rest his soul, for everything? That's just crazy.
I think this is about time to shut it down. I think that's an ender if I've ever heard one.
You can't do that.
Oh my God.
Because I got to tell one story on Brian because he covered everything. And Brian was so funny because Gary Blair was having a press conference and Gary was being Gary. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was one of our best games we've ever had here. As soon as we walk out and Brian grabs me like this. Okay, three things he had wrong. Number 1, number 2, just so you know. Because Brian and Gary were tight because from Gary's time up in Dallas. But, we had good fun because Gary would also laugh when we correct his mistakes, but it's great. Brian grabs me, 3 things. Okay, number 1, number 2, number 3.
Yeah. You know, I tell you, to bring it to present day, you know, I really don't know how you guys do it, how you and Brent and everybody do it, because I've interviewed Jimbo once. And listen, if I didn't have a tape recorder on me, I would have been dead. I would have been just dead. I mean, my man Jimbo, he's just like a Gatling gun of quotes coming at you. I don't know how he does it.
Live tweeting is impossible.
Here's the deal is, I tape Jimbo, and sometimes if you're on deadline, I go, "Dear Jesus, I hope this is exactly what he said," because I'll play the tape and I'll go to people, "What's these 3 words?" A lot of times I ask my wife. She goes, "I have no idea what he just said." I go, "Well, he should have said this." I mean, you slow it down. He talks so fast, you don't even know what he said. I mean,
I know.
It's incredible. Never have I covered a guy like that. Then I always love if the seasons start to overlap, if you can get him and Gary on the same day, and you listen to that tape. And I'm looking to see if my are all right.
Oh my gosh, that would be too much. That would just be too much. You know, I will say this. I mean, you know, I know a lot of Texas fans obviously wish total death to everything A&M, and that's fine, right? Whatever. But me personally, you know, I want A&M to be undefeated. I really do. I want Texas to be undefeated, because the only way we're going to get this game, you know, is in the CFP, right? I mean, the SEC is not going to allow this game to be played in a meaningless bowl game, you know, so it's going to have to be, you know, in a playoff spot, which is great. That's totally fine, you know. And I really hope that happens. I mean, I still can't believe that ball popped out of that dude's hand, you know, diving for the pylon against Clemson, right? You know, that should have been a signature Jimbo win, you know, that night, right? You know, and obviously I don't get to watch all the A&M games because of my schedule and the Big 12 schedule and whatnot. But I really do hope Kellen Mond has a great year. I hope that the defense, you know, gets going, and I just hope A&M can get it going as well, and really get to climbing in the SEC.
Before we go, I will say, like I said, our time together, Brian, was great. And to be quite honest with you, Mackenzie and Franchione weren't that bad to cover. It was fun times. Everybody has quirks. Franchione would always stay after practice, answer every question that we ever asked him. Might not give us the answer we wanted, but it was fun times. You know, it was evidently more fun for us than him.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I mean, the good times stopped when the Shermanator showed up. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I feel like the Shermanator has been erased. You know, it's like you know, I wish I had one of those sticks from the Matrix. You know, I can flash it. You know, and we had the Shermanator era is wiped from the A&M memory bank. But you know, I mean, I hate to say this. But to me, the Shermanator is totally summed up in the shot of him looking down at the grass, not even wanting to watch Justin Tucker's kick. You know, to me, that's the Shermanator in a nutshell. And a great guy, a very nice guy, but it just didn't work.
But at least he was getting Franchione's VIP letter. I wasn't, and that was that I never did get that.
That's right. That's right. I think Brent is the only person he should have been the pool reporter, you know, on the VIP newsletter.
And Brent got the free copy. You know, I mean, he didn't have to pay for it. So I didn't understand that.
I know.
Let me throw Brent under the bus. He's not watching.
Yeah.
Just kidding about that. That didn't happen. Brent was the one who broke the story. So, and that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is that, like I said, Brent tipped his cap. Brent did break that story. It was awesome for him. And you know, like I said, my editor calls me up and just totally rings me out. How did you not know about this? I'm like, that's a secret. How am I supposed to know about the secret newsletter, right? But at the end of the day, at the end of that day, I had 3 copies of 3 different newsletters, and I was like, wow, my man Mackenzie, man, these are very well detailed. These are very organized, you know, and basically, you know, if you think about it, you know, A&M, 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 you know, A it was more inside than Lucci ever gets, quite frankly. It was some of the stuff you can't even read on TexAgs.
Who have we left out and not reamed yet today? That's really the main question. We need
now you can see now you can see why I love post and pre games back in those days of press conference sitting beside Brian Davis. We did get off base a few times.
See, awesome. I think when I was there, I think Gabe was a little tad young to where he wasn't as comfortable just grinding in and being part of the crazy conversation now. Because I've seen some of the videos on Texas. I've seen what he's doing now. He has no problems, doing that now. And then once you throw OB into the mix, oh my God, it is a scene there. It is a scene there in Bryan College Station.
There's a lot of times at press conferences, I'm sitting there and I go, man, boy, we could use Brian Davis right now.
You know what? Charlie Strong and Tom Herman would probably agree with you. Man, let's get this guy out of here. They could really use him in College Station.
Listen, guys, this has been the best one for me because we got y'all two over here. I can just sit back and just listen to all the great stories. This has been fantastic.
This is the best Facebook ever.
There you go. Well, Brian, thanks so much for it. Do you have anything else you want to before I close this out?
Just good. Hope you and your family are doing well, Brian. Thanks for being on. Be safe. Be safe. Want to see you down the road.
Yeah,
absolutely. Want to see you guys down the road. Hopefully, we have this basketball game in December. Well, I guess they're not going to play each other, but they're both Texas and A&M are going to play that game at the Summit. Well, it's not the Summit, wherever the Rockets play these days. And hopefully our paths, these two programs' paths, continue to intertwine in all the smaller sports, especially baseball. I hope they keep the baseball thing going because I think that's pretty cool in the spring.
For sure. Well, Brian, thanks so much for your time. Hey, real quick, Twitter. How can the people find you, follow you?
Yeah, if you're an A&M fan and you just have to read what crazy things the Burnt Orange are doing, if you want to know what TU is doing on an every hour basis, you can follow me at BDavisAAS. But we do not call it TU on the old Twitter side.
There you go. Well, Brian, thanks so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. This has been a pleasure. And like C said, stay safe. And we'll talk to you again soon down the line.
Appreciate it, guys.